Welcome to Cordell and Cordell's Men's Divorce Podcast, moderated by Managing Partner and CEO Scott Trout, bringing you information for guys before, during, and after divorce, and everything related to family law. This podcast is not to be taken as legal advice, and no attorney-client relationship is established.
Hey, welcome back to the Men's Divorce Cordell and Cordell Podcast. I'm Scott Trout, Managing Partner, CEO of Cordell and Cordell, and we are bringing you, in this holiday season, a relevant topic, and that is really co-parenting issues during the holiday season. We have a number of holidays coming up over the next 60 days that will probably, most likely, cause challenges for you, and we're joined by Senior Litigation Partner Kelly Burris down in Texas. Welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me, Scott.
Thanks for joining. And as always, as we always note at the very top, as you've already heard, and if you're an avid listener or watcher, it's not legal advice. We just kind of want to give you some general topics and information that will serve as a good guide for you to schedule a consultation with an attorney who practices exclusively in family law like we do, and as Kelly does down in Texas. You can find out more information if you want a consult after listening to this, or you need one. You can give us a call at 866-DADS-LAW, or better yet, you can just go online to CordellCordell.com. There's a place for you to look up the office closest to you by entering your zip code, and you can schedule a consultation right there from the website. You don't even have to pick up the phone or engage with anyone. It's a real simple process. It'll show you the availability. You can do it via Zoom, WebEx, you can do it on the phone, or you can do it in person, whatever's convenient for you. So check us out, CordellCordell.com. All right, Kelly, let's get right to it. Some of the things, that people experience during the holidays, especially whether they're, in the middle of a divorce or they're thinking about divorce or they haven't really filed, even post-divorce, they have a lot of issues, particularly when holidays come around as they try to figure out what they're going to do with regards to custody, or what we call possession, I think, in Texas. So what are the common, instances you see in your career where, people are really having conflicts with co-parenting during the holiday season?
Yeah, it is a very common thing. And matter of fact, I tend to get calls from clients and new consults a lot right around the holidays. And it's almost always revolving around some possession issue with the kids or some other exchanges or something to do with that. I think that the first most common issue is people, and it really depends on whether you have a court order in place, you don't have a court order in place, you have an attorney, you don't have an attorney. All of those results for those things matter. But a lot of the times people will fight and argue over who gets which holidays, who had the holiday last year, who's getting the holiday this year, if they've been separated, or if they're newly separated. Both parents want the kids over Christmas, right? So both parents want to wake up on Christmas morning and see their little ones do Santa or whatever your tradition may be. And so there's a big argument over who gets that time. Same thing's true with everybody has their traditions. And when you go through a divorce, or you go through a separation, the kids can only be with one parent usually for a happy, a happy holiday to some extent. And so who's going to get those holidays, and how does that work, and how is that going to be split up?
Yeah. And I think it's ripe that those types of problems, when you mix in holiday season, it's ripe for problem, or being a problem, when you don't have a custody order in place, because now you're in a fight where I'm leaving anyway. Too bad. I'm leaving for Thanksgiving to go visit my parents. Good luck to you, kind of situation, isn't it? Exactly.
And so if you don't have an order in place, it's just kind of a free for all. Who kind of gets the kids first, or who's the most aggressive? And, unfortunately for a lot of our guys, when they go and they try to aggressively get possession of the kids, that may look worse in a court than it might for a mom that's trying to aggressively get possession of the kids. So, that's a big problem. And trying to work out agreements like that when you have somebody on the other side that's sort of my way or the highway is going to be really difficult.
And even with a court order, I know in my experience that it doesn't mean that everything is going to work perfectly, smoothly, and you're not going to have any custody possession problems during the holiday, because, inevitably I get a phone call. She didn't show up for Thanksgiving to exchange the kids. I have a court order. Now what do I do? You see that all the time. We'll talk about kind of solutions, but that, not to mislead people as they're thinking, because it applies to those who have one and also who don't have a court order, right?
Exactly. So I end up with a lot of those types of issues where somebody comes in and says, I didn't get the kids what do I do? And it's not like the courts are open on Thanksgiving. It's not like we can, and even if we could, it's not like the courts would hear an emergency motion or have an emergency hearing about that particular issue. So a lot of the times our hands are tied. Now there are some states that will have police enforcement and help with enforcing a court order. But, if she took off and took the kids out of state during that time, and a lot of the times if, a parent is going to deny possession of to the other parent, they're wily enough to do it in a way that you can't easily fix it. So it's certainly something that we run into, and trying to rush in and get emergency hearings on that is extremely difficult.
Yeah, even during COVID, interestingly, and I think it applies now, you were having a lot of parents saying, look, I don't believe it's safe to travel. The pandemic is causing me concern. Let's just stay in place during this holiday, whether it's Thanksgiving or any other holiday during this season. And yet, despite that, despite maybe even prior agreements, despite prior assurances, parents may be leaving even when you say, look, I would like you to stay put and we can have equal access during this holiday, right?
Exactly. So parents leaving without a court order. So there's all these different phases of a case. And sometimes we have like standing court orders in some counties in Texas where the court, the parents can't leave out of state, even though we don't have maybe a formal court order. It's worth looking at to say, hey, is there something else dictating what's going on with their family if they don't have a final court order, but they may be in the middle of litigation? If you're pre-litigation, again, it's sort of a free-for-all in most states. But contacting someone to determine what state law is. I mean, I have consults come in all the time that say, hey, look, she took the child out of state. There's no court order. Isn't that kidnapping? So if you don't have a court order in most states, like I said, it's a free for all.
Yeah. And, kind of my favorite is, and I've often talked about it at seminars where we talk about parental alienation. And that is, some of the common disputes or conflicts really come about when you say it's time to buy gifts, whether it's a birthday in during this holiday season, whether it's a Christmas or whatever other holiday. That can give rise to a conflict about buying gifts where one parent said, look, don't bother. I don't want you buying gifts, or trying to drop them off and somehow they disappear. That is a conflict in and of itself, is this gift giving season, right?
Exactly. And so, if parents don't have an agreement, or even if you do sort of have an agreement about what the gifts are going to be and how those gifts are going to work, it's smart to make sure that you kind of have your own thing and you're ready to do your own thing with respect to the kids. Additionally, I have sometimes the question of, hey, I'm paying child support, so shouldn't that cover those types of things? And most states, no. I mean, you're not allowed to dictate what another person does with their child support. And so, it's not going to go over well with kids who think they're getting gifts from a parent, and that parent says, well, I pay the other parent all this money, I pay mom all this money, and I don't know where your presents are. So, most states that doesn't cover that. And I've had that question come up. And I mean, I get that child support can be expensive, but, don't rely on the other parent to take care of those types of issues. It's something that each parent needs to be addressing individually.
So I think now let's get to the question that everyone has. And I think if you look around and you Google, you surf the internet, there are a lot of problems identified by lawyers. Like, this is a problem, this is a problem, this is a problem, expect this problem. But oftentimes they don't have solutions. And so everyone's saying, well, this is great stuff, Kelly. Thank you for pointing out the obvious that I'm already incurred, because my current wife won't let me see my kids during Thanksgiving. So now what do you do? I mean, let's kind of start with what would be important, what actions. Obviously, everyone's different. And so this isn't gospel, but these are some ideas that you should be, I imagine, discussing with your attorney, or if you're looking for one, saying, okay, hey, I heard, Kelly Burris talk about this. Let's talk about some possible solutions. What would be at the top of your list?
So I think first and foremost, check your state law to see if there's any fallback consult with an attorney to see what state law is if there's anything in place regarding that. Also, keep in mind that if you have no court order, there's no divorce on file, there's no case setting on file, maybe your best step is to just go ahead and get that done now and head it off at the pass before the holidays come around, if you anticipate that being a problem. Many states have, in Texas, we have temporary orders. We have those standing court orders I was mentioning earlier. So the standing court orders in most cities say that the one parent can't unreasonably deny access to the other parent. Now that's a very wishy-washy type thing. But at least there's some protection in just filing. And that goes into place as soon as a party files in most counties. Additionally, we can do temporary orders hearings, and usually we can get those sent in many jurisdictions. So Austin, where I practice primarily in Travis County, I can usually get those set. I can get it set within maybe a month to 2 months out. So for cases right now, if we're looking for the Christmas holiday, and I know that that's going to be somewhat of an issue. I have cases right now I have set for temporary orders hearings prior to the holiday season, knowing that we need a possession schedule in place prior to the holidays. Now, the concern with a lot of states is that we're at the beginning of November, and I have a lot of clients that will come in and say, hey, I'm thinking this is going to be an issue. I need to get into the court before the holidays. And many jurisdictions have no court time between now and then. So if you're going to do it, you got to do it sooner rather than later if you think you're going to need a hearing, because even now I'm setting cases in some courts, even for a 2-hour hearing. The courts don't have any availability till January. Everybody tries to rush into court. There's a big rush for court dates right at the end of the year for divorces and custody cases. Mm-hmm. So if you anticipate this is going to be a problem you need court of intervention for, the best thing to do is do something right now.
Yeah. Anticipate the problem. And I think that is especially post-pandemic, where when I first started practicing 30 years ago, it was not unusual for a case to be 3 to 5 years. And then over time, we began passing laws that required it to be completed with under a year, which was a wonderful and sometimes painful because a lot had to be done. But now I think we're right back to where we started, which was now we're looking, I've got a case that's over 2 years old, still no trial date, which means, if you're new into it and you're filing or you need to file and anticipate this problem happening coming forward so that you can get to court when you need to get to court in a reasonable amount of time, which, like I said, maybe you're not denied your Christmas custody, but be thinking about it. Maybe it needs to be in front of a judge, but get filed or do this. But I think what the pandemic taught is to anticipate that in your language, if you have an order or you're drafting an order, to be thinking about, okay, when's the next pandemic? That was perhaps one of the things that, of course, none of us anticipated something like this where the country would shut down. So a lot of orders didn't have a solution. They left these parents and parties kind of in this no man's land where, well, what do we do now? And some people would take off and there's no remedy. So now we begin to think about being very specific in your order, being very detailed in your order. Think about the unexpected, the next pandemic, the next problem, so that you don't have to go to court, or at least you have an enforceable court order, right?
Right. Absolutely. Making sure that you're kind of anticipating those things, and also just hopefully many cases, the parties can work it out between themselves, but you need to make sure those things are in writing and enforceable with the court. So even if you're not planning on going to trial or getting a judge to intervene in a case, getting some types of agreements in place right now is going to be crucial, because a lot of the times there's that quid pro quo for Thanksgiving and Christmas. And, if she says, hey, if you'll give me Thanksgiving, I'll give you Christmas. You don't have anything in writing. She does the Thanksgiving and says, you know what? I've changed my mind. I'm not going to give you Christmas because my family and I have done we're doing some big holiday thing. So you're not going to get Christmas either. And you have no enforceable agreement, no enforceable court order. It's too late to do anything about it. Right. So, starting to work on agreements now, make sure those are in writing and enforceable are going to be crucial strategies as well.
It's so frustrating. I know, like I said, in my 30 years, I've had those calls where they had an oral agreement and then Christmas comes along or the next holiday, and then you don't get the custody that you thought you were going to get. And you expect things to go awry, but put it in writing, whatever it may be. And there aren't easy solutions on the day of an exchange when it's on a holiday, when the court can't do anything. And the police they probably won't get involved, or the sheriff will likely come by and just say, look, take it to court. And that leads to a ton of frustration, not only about the process, the system, but with your attorney, because we are handcuffed in some regards. That's why they think, as you suggest, it's important to be proactive, to ensure that you're aware of what your order allows and what it prohibits, and what you're entitled to. And but everything has to be in writing. And for me, because if let's just say the inevitable may happen and you lose custody on a holiday or in a summer or whatever it may be, now you can use that writing that shows that you had an agreement, that she decided to go against that agreement. And now you can try to get some time made up or whatever it may be. But that's so important. But all in all, at the end of the day, as you talk about quid pro quo and being flexible, it is about the kids in the holiday season trying to be, as attentive to what impact it has on them, despite what impact it has on you.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think that the holidays are a time for, family and joy and all of that. But we're keeping in mind that this is about the kids and this is about the joy that Christmas is for them. And it's hard. I know people going through divorce, it's very emotional. It's very difficult, but it's a great time to try to set aside those differences as much as possible. I'll just give you a small anecdote. My parents, when I was young, were going through a divorce, and my first Christmas, my dad slept downstairs in the guest room on Christmas Eve because it was my first Christmas where they were going to be apart. They were separated. And I know that must have been miserable for both my parents. And I'm certainly not suggesting that's right for everyone. But, the ability for my parents to be able to put aside their differences when they were going through a messy divorce to make sure that my holiday was okay and happy and fun is a testament to their parenting. And so, I just use that as an example of something that, even though you may be going through a difficult time in your life, prioritizing the kids and their wants and needs and making sure that it's a happy season for them is, just keeping it perspective is important.
Yeah. Choose your battles. There's not to take, I think that the takeaway here isn't that we suggest you give up your rights for the sake of your kids. The point is fight the war at the appropriate time. And it's not like you're giving away the ability to pursue your rights simply, as you suggest, simply because you want to compromise during a holiday. All right, we're going to take it to court in January or in February, and we'll use what's happened and occurred against your spouse, period, to show that they're less likely to afford the other parent the court-ordered time. So it's not that we're suggesting to you, give up your rights, suck it up, forget about it. There is a point where you can do what's right as a parent, and then we pursue the litigation, right?
Right. There's a place and time for everything. And, fighting in front of the kids about who gets what time is not it. So, we have the ability, especially if you have those agreements in writing, like we've suggested, if you have those agreements in writing, then there's a time that you can go back and enforce that time. And I have judges all the time that will, if one parent got denied holiday time one year, then that parent gets both holidays the following year, or gets some other type of makeup time that will to some extent try to make up for that lost time, but certainly in front of the kids is not the appropriate place to fight that out.
Yeah. Well, Kelly, thanks for the great info, the solutions, which are hard to come by when you're searching the internet. So I appreciate your time today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, here it is. I know holiday is a stressful time, especially if you're going through divorce, facing a divorce, something you oftentimes haven't chosen or you don't want. There are solutions. We can put you in a position, the best position possible to achieve your goals, but you got to have a consultation. It's the only way to get legal advice. That's something we can't do here. It's something we won't do here, but we want to give you the information, the tools necessary to try to put you in that position. So we're happy to have a consult with you. You can go to CordellCordell.com, schedule an appointment with us in the manner and fashion that you want to do. We have offices around the country, including the United Kingdom. Also, check us out on YouTube. You can subscribe to this podcast on Apple iTunes. You'll be alerted every time something drops. And look out for the virtual town hall coming up here this month and next month, where we know if you listen to this, you have questions and we're going to get you answers. That's what the virtual town hall is all about. 30 minutes live. You can log on and you can ask a question of the panel of Cordell and Cordell attorneys and get some direction and get some answers right there and right then. So check it out. Go to CordellCordell.com for the next virtual town hall, or on Facebook, you'll find it as well. Until then, have a great rest of the week.